Bukit Fraser terletak di negeri Pahang di atas banjaran Titiwangsa, Malaysia. Ia merupakan kawasan pelancongan pergunungan yang menarik kerana suhunya sejuk, 17-24 kk. Puncak tertinggi Bukit Fraser ialah 1,310 meter dari aras laut, kira-kira 104 km dari Bandaraya Kuala Lumpur. Bukit ini terletak di dalam Mukim Trust di daerah Raub Pahang. Bukit Fraser mendapat nama dari seorang pengembara British pada zaman kolonial, iaitu Louis James Fraser. Terdapat pelbagai cerita menarik tentang beliau, tetapi tidak begitu jelas, termasuk beliau sebagai pengeluar dadah, candu dan perjudian di antara para pelombong di Pahang. Banyak bangunan dan banglo dibina mengikut cita rasa kolonial British. Dinding rumah dari batu konkrit besar yang disusun dan disimenkan. Warna dinding berwarna putih dengan diselang-seli warna hitam pada tiang jenang. Pagar rumah dibuat daripada pokok-pokok bunga. Lebar jalan raya agak terhad, iaitu hanya 2 lorong, dan sukar untuk berselisih kereta. Tiada bas naik ke Bukit Fraser kerana jalan rayanya sempit. Banyak selekor berbahaya dan curam. Di sepanjang jalan, banyak tanah runtuh yang ditutup dengan kain plastik berbelang atau sedang diperbaiki. Kini bas boleh sampai ke puncak kerana jalan naik dan turun berasingan. Tiada lagi jadual untuk naik dan turun seperti dahulu. Menariknya, tandas awam beroperasi 24 jam dan bersih. Filem Misteri Delilah 2019, terbitan Scope Productions dan Astro Show, pernah menjalani penggambaran di Bukit Fraser. Pekannya agak kecil dan kebanyakan aktiviti di sini tertumpu di sebuah dataran yang mempunyai sebuah menara jam yang cantik. Kebanyakan kemudahan di sini terletak di dalam bangunan-bangunan yang terbina pada zaman penjajahan Inggeris. Pusat peranginan ini dianggap sebagai tempat terunggul untuk aktiviti memerhati burung dan sering menjadi tuan rumah acara tahunan. Pertandingan memerhati burung antarabangsa Bukit Fraser. Pertandingan ini memerlukan peserta menyusuri laluan-laluan trek yang terdapat di dalam hutan di sini bagi mencari dan merekodkan jumlah pelbagai jenis burung yang boleh dilihat dalam tempoh masa yang ditetapkan. Suasana di Bukit Fraser menyerupai suasana perkampungan di pedalaman negara Scotland yang dipenuhi dengan bangunan granit kelabu dengan gajah tudur. Harga makanan amat berpatutan. Malah ada makanan yang lebih murah dari sesetengah tempat pelancongan, amat sesuai untuk bercuti dan berehat. Terdapat juga kedai-kedai cenderamata yang terhad. Air terjunnya sangat menarik dan indah. Bukit Fraser termasuk 7 puncak dengan ketinggian antara 1,220 dan 1,524 meter di atas paras laut. Stesen Jabatan Meteorologi diukur pada 1,280 meter. Suhu sepanjang tahun adalah antara 17 Kelkiuk, 25 Kelkiuk, 63 Fahrenheit, 77 Fahrenheit. Resort ini terletak 64.6 batu 104 km dari ibu kota negara Kuala Lumpur dan 236 km dari ibu negeri Kuantan. Di kaki pendakian yang curam, di ketinggian hanya 800 meter, adalah Degap, di mana sebuah rumah ibadat penjajah dulu. Jalan lorong 8 km yang berliku dari Degap dibuka dalam arah ganti setiap jam. Jam peluang untuk naik dan juga jam untuk turun. Pemanduan dari Degap ke Bukit Fraser mengambil masa kurang dari 20 minit. Sesetengah pelawat lebih suka berjalan kaki, melihat burung dan menikmati kejatuhan suhu yang ketara. Jalan alternatif baru dibuka pada tahun 2001, tetapi dari semasa ke semasa ini ditutup kerana tanah runtuh. Tanah runtuh bagaimanapun adalah kejadian yang jarang berlaku hari ini. Jalan lama Gap Bukit Fraser hari ini berfungsi sebagai jalan masuk ke Bukit Fraser, manakala jalan baru yang dibuka pada tahun 2000 telah menjadi jalan keluar, nyaman dan menyegarkan sepanjang tahun. Bukit Fraser tetap popular dengan rakyat Malaysia dan Singapura untuk istirahat syarikat dan rehat hujung minggu. Padang golf tanah tinggi yang terawal di Malaysia telah dibina di Bukit Fraser pada tahun 1925. Lapangan 9 lubang dibina di bekas Lombong Timah pada tahun 1970-an. Kursus 18 lubang telah ditambah di Jeriau, kira-kira 3 km dari bandar utama. Terdapat beberapa laluan mendaki di sekitar bukit. Pintu masuk mereka biasanya ditandakan dengan papan tanda. Terdapat juga air terjun yang boleh diakses. Jejak dari Hermant Trail berjalan kaki singkat ke Pine Tree Trail trek sepanjang hari. Fraser Hill adalah pusat penting untuk pemerhatian burung. Stesen bukit ini mempunyai lebih daripada 270 spesies burung tempatan dan burung yang bermigrasi di sini bersama-sama. Perlumbaan burung antarabangsa tahunan diadakan pada hujung minggu kedua Jun setiap tahun yang dianjurkan oleh Perbadanan Pembangunan Fraser Hill dengan kerjasama WWF. Ia melihat para peserta di seluruh dunia berkumpul di stesen bukit dalam persaingan pasukan untuk melihat, mengenal pasti dan merekodkan tertinggi bilangan spesies burung yang dinyatakan. Dalam senarai semak rasmi, terdapat tempat yang khusus untuk penggaran burung yang merupakan jambatan gantung logam yang telah siap dibina tetapi masih menunggu beberapa kelulusan sebelum diberikan untuk dibuka kepada orang ramai. Dari arah Kuala Lumpur menuju Kerawang, Kuala Kubu Baru, Ampang Pecah dan Gap. Seterusnya mendaki secara terus ke Bukit Fraser dari arah Kuala Lumpur, Bentong, Rawak, Tanam, Gap. Seterusnya mendaki secara terus ke Bukit Fraser.
Divorced over a paternity scandal. What he learns, 10 years later, changes everything. Alara paid attention. Julian and Alara were overjoyed to welcome their newborns. But their happiness turned to shock when they noticed both children had a dark complexion despite their Caucasian heritage. Convinced that Alara had been unfaithful, Julian hastily divorced her, leaving her to raise the children alone. However, 10 years later, Julian uncovered a shocking truth about Alar's past, one that changed everything he thought he knew. An ideal union, Julian and Alara had been married for 5 years. Their relationship admired by friends and family who saw them as the perfect couple. Julian, a real estate developer, and Alara, an artist, seemed to balance each other effortlessly, sharing a warm and loving home. However, beneath the surface, unseen cracks had begun to form, hinting at the shocking revelation that lay ahead. A startling birth. Alara had endured a difficult labor, but the couple's joy knew no bounds when the doctor announced the birth of triplets. However, as the babies were handed over, Julian's excitement quickly shifted to confusion and then disbelief. The child was of African descent, an undeniable reality that made his heart sink. Overwhelmed and unable to comprehend what he was seeing, he stood in stunned silence. The maternity ward's once joyous atmosphere now replaced by an eerie stillness. Julian becomes more perplexed. Julian struggled to understand how his children could have dark skin when both he and Alara were unmistakably Caucasian. He spent countless sleepless nights searching for answers, considering every possible explanation from medical errors to a mix-up at the hospital. Yet, despite his efforts to rationalize the situation, a gnawing suspicion about Alar's loyalty began to take hold, growing stronger with each passing moment. A dispute over accusations. Confrontations between Julian and Alara became a daily ordeal, filled with heated accusations and emotional outbursts. "How could you do this to me?" Julian would yell, his voice shaking the walls of their once peaceful home. Alara, through tearful pleas, adamantly denied any infidelity. "Julian, I swear, I have never cheated on you," she cried, begging him to trust her. But Julian's faith in her crumbled, and the love they once cherished was quickly consumed by overwhelming distrust and anger. A final decision. Unable to accept Alara's tearful denials, Julian filed for divorce, a decision that was both swift and agonizing. He packed only his personal belongings, leaving behind the life they had built together. "I can't stay here," he said before closing the door one final time. As he walked away, Alara stood alone in their empty home, tears streaming down her face, watching the love of her life disappear. A new beginning, after the divorce. Julian moved to another city, determined to leave the past behind. He immersed himself in his work as a real estate developer, taking on multiple projects and working long hours. His dedication paid off, and he quickly built a name for himself in the industry. However, success came at a price. His nights were lonely. and burying himself in work became the only way to escape the pain of his broken past. A life of solitude. Despite his professional success, Julian struggled to form meaningful relationships, as the lingering memories of his marriage cast a dark shadow over his life. Friends noticed his hesitation to let anyone in. "You should move on, Julian," his colleague Mike often urged, but Julian would only nod and force a smile. Knowing it was easier said than done, the ghosts of his past continued to haunt him, making it nearly impossible to trust again. Unspoken thoughts. Despite trying to suppress his feelings of betrayal and hurt, Julian often found his thoughts drifting to his children. Seeing kids playing in the park made him wonder what his own were like now. Are they happy? Do they even remember me? The unanswered questions tormented him, and the regret of not seeing them since the divorce gnawed at his heart. Every day, he battled the urge to reach out, afraid that doing so would only reopen old wounds. So, Julian often questioned whether leaving had been the right decision. Late at night, he would pace the floor, endlessly replaying the past in his mind. Though no other explanations seemed plausible, something still felt off. Yet, whenever doubts crept in, he quickly suppressed them, convincing himself that he had done what he had to do. There was no other explanation, he'd mutter, clinging to the only justification that brought him fleeting solace. Being alone has a cost. Julian's loneliness slowly eroded his spirit, leaving him emotionally drained. He often sat alone in his apartment, staring at the walls, overwhelmed by the weight of his isolation. Social gatherings no longer interested him, and though he told himself, "I should be happy," the reality felt far from it. His work began to suffer. His interactions became robotic, and the silence in his life grew deafening, clouding his judgment with each passing day. Haunted by the past, no matter how hard he tried, Julian couldn't outrun the ghosts of his past. Each night, he lay awake, tormented by thoughts of what could have been. The memory of his children lingered, leaving an aching void he couldn't fill. "I should have handled things differently," he would whisper to himself. But the regret offered no relief. Peace remained out of reach, and forging new connections felt impossible. Closure was something he simply couldn't find. LUAR's difficult journey. Alara faced immense challenges raising the triplets alone, enduring stares and whispers wherever she went. Yet she held her head high. Society judged her harshly, but she refused to be broken. Financial struggles loomed over her, and friends who once stood by her began to drift away. Still, Alara remained steadfast, pouring all her energy into providing for her children, determined to give them the best life possible. Working multiple jobs to make ends meet, Alara worked tirelessly, juggling multiple jobs, waiting tables by day and cleaning offices by night. "Mommy, when will you be home?" her children would ask, and though exhausted, she would smile and say, "Soon, darlings," with little support from friends or family. She relied on sheer determination and love to keep going. Despite their struggles, her children never felt unloved, even when they had little else. Keeping secrets? To protect her children, Alara kept their origins a secret, carefully avoiding the difficult questions that arose. When they asked, "Mom, where is Dad?" she would smile and gently steer the conversation elsewhere. The absence of their father weighed heavily on her, a topic she wrestled with daily. She believed that revealing the truth would only bring more confusion and pain, so she chose to shield them from it for as long as she could. Rising questions. As the triplets grew older, their curiosity about their father intensified, and their questions became more frequent. "Why don't we have a dad like the other kids?" they would ask, their innocent eyes searching for answers. Alara often found herself on the verge of tears, struggling to maintain the facade as her heart ached with every inquiry. "He's just not here," she would say softly, wishing she could offer more. But the fear of revealing too much kept her from ever fully answering. Becoming resilient. As the years passed, Alara grew more resilient, shaped by the hardships that transformed her into a fierce protector of her family. She balanced work and home with unwavering dedication, never allowing her love and support for her children to falter. "No one will tear us apart," she declared, firmly whenever friends questioned her choices. She attended school meetings, advocated for her children's education, and fought tirelessly for their rights, becoming the unshakable pillar her family needed, creating a loving home. Despite countless hardships, Ilara managed to create a stable and loving home for her children, filling it with warmth, laughter, and unwavering support. "We don't have much, but we have each other," she would say, her heart swelling with pride. Though life was far from easy, her children never doubted they were deeply loved. Ilara worked tirelessly to shield them from the pain of their incomplete family, ensuring they always felt safe, cherished, and whole. Remarkable talents. As the triplets grew, each displayed remarkable talents, one excelling in academics, another in sports, and the third in music. Their achievements didn't go unnoticed, drawing admiration from the community. "Your kids are something special," neighbors would remark, their awe sincere. Ilara and her children became a source of inspiration, their resilience shining as a beacon of hope. Though their struggles remained, their journey was a testament to how far they had come. Julian learns of their success. One day, Julian stumbled upon an article celebrating the triplets' achievements, and a rush of mixed emotions flooded his heart: pride, confusion, and deep regret. "They made it," he whispered, his eyes lingering on their photos, marveling at how much they had grown. He felt proud of their success, but couldn't shake the ache of his absence in their lives. Regret gnawed at him, and though he longed to reach out, fear of reopening old wounds held him back. Yet, the article stirred something deep within him, reigniting emotions he had buried for years. Doubting his judgment, Julian found himself questioning whether he had judged Ilara too harshly, replaying their arguments, her tearful pleas, and the swift decision to walk away. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in: had he been wrong? But just as quickly, he pushed the thought aside. "I did what I had to do," he told himself firmly, forcing the uncertainty back into the depths of his mind, unwilling to unravel the truth he had clung to for so long. Dreams of the past, vivid dreams of the children he had never truly known, began haunting Julian at night, their presence feeling almost tangible. Each time, he would wake in a cold sweat, their faces etched into his mind, making it impossible to ignore their existence. Why now? He wondered, as these dreams stirred emotions he had long tried to suppress, adding yet another layer of turmoil to his already conflicted thoughts. Unexpected reunion. At a high school reunion, Julian reconnected with an old friend, Carter, and they caught up over drinks, exchanging pleasantries. "How's life treating you?" Carter asked casually, but when Ilara's name surfaced, his expression shifted. He revealed the immense struggles Ilara had faced after the divorce. "She had a really tough time, man," Carter admitted, his voice laced with sympathy. Julian listened in stunned silence, his guilt intensifying with every word, the unexpected revelation leaving him shaken. Confusion and guilt. Carter's words deepened Julian's confusion and guilt, making his past decisions feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. He couldn't shake off what he had learned, and doubt crept in. Did I really do the right thing? The question looped in his mind, pulling him into a spiral of regret and uncertainty. The weight of his choices pressed down on him, leaving him with more questions than answers, and a painful sting of past judgments. Hiring a private investigator, overwhelmed by unresolved emotions, Julian made a bold choice. He hired a private investigator to look into Ilara and the children. He needed answers, and he needed them now. Without hesitation, he picked up the phone and dialed a number he had found online. "I want to know everything about them," he instructed firmly. Though the decision felt intrusive, he justified it as a necessary step for their well-being. Seeking answers, Julian tried to justify his actions, telling himself, it's for their well-being, though deep down, he knew he was also searching for closure. As the days dragged on, his anxiety grew, impatiently awaiting the investigator's findings. He hoped for answers that would ease his torment, something to validate his choices. Yet, beneath it all, he couldn't ignore the truth. His motives were far more complicated than he cared to admit. Investigator finally reported back. When the investigator finally reported back, Julian was stunned. Ilara had faced overwhelming challenges since the divorce but had remained steadfast and honorable. She had dedicated herself entirely to their children, becoming their unwavering pillar of support. There was no trace of infidelity or deception, nothing to justify the doubts he had carried for so long. A wave of relief washed over him, but it was quickly followed by confusion as the foundation of his assumptions began to crumble. No evidence of deceit. The investigators' report left no room for doubt. There was no evidence of infidelity or deception on Ilara's part. Every assumption Julian had clung to now seemed baseless, and the realization hit him harder than he expected. "How could I have been so wrong?" he muttered, struggling to reconcile his past beliefs with the undeniable truth. Clarity should have brought relief, but instead, it unleashed a flood of conflicting emotions, leaving him unsure of how to move forward. Internal conflict. Armed with the new information, Julian struggled to make sense of his emotions, feeling as if the foundation of his past decisions had crumbled beneath him. Each revelation about Ilara's hardships deepened his regret, forcing him to ask himself, "Did I judge her unfairly?" His mind became a battleground of remorse and lingering guilt, leaving him standing at a crossroads, torn between the man he once was and the man he was becoming. Questioning his past decisions, Julian couldn't shake the overwhelming sense that he had made a terrible mistake by not trusting Ilara and walking away. The investigators' findings shattered his long-held beliefs, leaving him with a single haunting question. Did I abandon my family for nothing? The weight of his choices pressed down on him, heavier than ever. His mind raced with thoughts of what could have been, and as the past 10 years flashed before his eyes, he found himself questioning everything. A trip back home, Julian decided to visit his old hometown under the guise of attending a high school reunion. Though it had long been a distant memory, packing his bags, he felt a mix of nostalgia and apprehension. "It's just a reunion," he told himself. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Revisiting the past was inevitable, and this trip was the first step toward the closure he desperately needed, familiar yet changed. As Julian drove through town, he noticed how much had changed. New buildings stood where old shops once were, yet some familiar landmarks remained. The high school looked nearly the same, just with a fresh coat of paint. "Some things never change," he muttered, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. Parking his car, he took a deep breath, bracing himself to confront the memories waiting for him in the place that had once been his entire world. Catching up with old friends. At the reunion, Julian reconnected with old friends he hadn't seen in years. Between laughter and reminiscing, conversations naturally drifted to the people they had left behind. "Have you heard about you?" one friend asked, and Julian listened intently as they spoke of her with admiration. He learned that she had built a strong reputation in the community, respected for her resilience and perseverance. Her journey was described as both inspiring and humbling, casting a new light on the woman he had once left behind. Admiration for as Julian's friends praised Ilara's efforts and sacrifices in raising the children alone. A knot tightened in his stomach. "She's done an incredible job with those kids," one friend remarked, detailing her unwavering dedication and hard work. She had become a cornerstone of the community, deeply respected by those around her. With every story shared, Julian realized just how little he knew about the life she had built without him. The admiration in their voices was undeniable, making his regret even harder to ignore. Seeing them again, attending a community event, Julian blended into the crowd, his eyes scanning the scene until they landed on his children for the first time in years. They laughed and played, effortlessly engaging with those around them. "They've grown so much," he whispered, his chest tightening with emotion. The weight of everything he had missed crashed over him, pride in their strength, sadness for the lost time, and an aching sense of regret. Watching from a distance, he finally saw the life he had walked away from, and it was more overwhelming than he had ever imagined. Reaching out, moved by the sight of his children and the life he had missed, Julian finally found the courage to reach out to Ilara. With a deep breath, he picked up his phone, hesitating for a moment before dialing her number. "Hello, it's Julian," he said, his voice unsteady. A brief silence followed before she responded, her tone cautious yet composed. He could feel the weight of unspoken history between them, but he pressed on. "I'd like to talk," he admitted. The conversation felt like the start of something uncertain, perhaps closure, perhaps something more. Ilara's apprehension. Ilara's voice carried the weight of years of pain and resilience as she questioned. Julian's sudden reappearance. "Why now, Julian?" she asked, suspicion laced in her tone. She had worked hard to move on, to build a life without him, and reopening old wounds was the last thing she wanted. Julian could hear the caution in her voice and hurried to reassure her. "I'm not here to fight, Ilara. I just want to understand," he said earnestly. Though her hesitation was clear, he clung to the hope that she might give him a chance to make sense of the past. A desire for reconciliation. Julian's voice was steady, but laced with regret as he expressed his desire to reconcile and uncover the truth. "I've been wrong about a lot of things," he admitted, his honesty cutting through the years of silence between them. Ilara remained quiet, uncertain of his true intentions. Sensing her hesitation, he pressed on. "I just want to know the truth. For my peace of mind and for the kids' sake." There was a sincerity in his words that she couldn't ignore. Though still guarded, Ilara felt a small flicker of hope. Perhaps, after all this time, they could finally find some form of resolution. An emotional meeting. They met in a quiet, neutral space, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Julian arrived early, his nerves raw as he rehearsed what he might say. When Ilara finally walked in, a flood of memories rushed over him, making it hard to find his voice. They sat across from each other, the tension heavy and unyielding. "I don't know where to begin," Julian admitted, his voice tight with emotion. Ilara's gaze was steady, but guarded. "The beginning would be a good place," she said. They both knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but it was long overdue. Seeking the truth, Julian leaned forward, his voice firm yet desperate. "I can't move forward without understanding what really happened." He needed the truth, not just for closure, but to make sense of the years lost. Ilara exhaled slowly, visibly bracing herself. "All right, Julian. If you really want to know, I'll tell you everything," she said, her tone measured but heavy with emotion. The weight of her words settled between them, thick with unspoken pain. Julian steeled himself, knowing that whatever she was about to reveal would forever alter his understanding of the past. Ilara reluctant to reveal. Ilara shifted uneasily in her seat, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the table as Julian's intense gaze locked onto hers, silently demanding answers. "I don't know where to begin," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Leaning in, Julian's expression remained steadfast. "Just tell me the truth," he urged. A heavy silence hung between them as Ilara hesitated, the weight of years of secrecy pressing down on her, the room seeming to shrink under the echoes of past decisions. Ending without resolution, the conversation continued, but answers remained just out of reach as Julian and Ilara circled the core issue, neither willing to face the painful truth. With each passing minute, it became clear that resolution wouldn't come in a single conversation. "We can try again another time," Julian finally said, frustration evident in his voice. Ilara nodded, her expression unreadable. And as they parted ways, the air between them remained heavy with unspoken words, leaving Julian with more questions than ever. Julian remains in town. Rather than returning to his city, Julian chose to stay, renting a small apartment, distant enough to give Ilara space but close enough to remain part of their lives. He immersed himself in local activities, gradually becoming a familiar presence, his arrival stirring both memories and speculation. Yet, his purpose remained clear. He was here to understand Ilara and the children, not merely passing through, but staying for good. Attending school events. Julian began attending the children's school events, lingering at the back, careful not to intrude. He watched with pride, clapping enthusiastically at their achievements. "Hey, you're Julian, right?" a parent asked during a school function. He nodded with a polite smile, gradually building a rapport with other parents and teachers. Though his presence drew attention, his focus remained solely on being there for his children. Slow, steady process of becoming part of their world. Children warming up, At first, the children were wary of Julian's sudden involvement, but gradually, they began to accept his presence. He cheered the loudest at their games and attended school meetings, listening intently. "Who's that man?" a friend asked. "That's our dad," came the hesitant reply. Day by day, Julian's persistence paid off. Brief exchanges turned into longer conversations, and the initial distance softened into cautious curiosity and tentative warmth. Community speculating. Julian's growing presence didn't escape the community's notice, sparking whispers and speculation about his intentions. Is he trying to come back into their lives? Some wondered aloud. Though aware of the gossip, Julian remained unfazed, keeping his focus on what truly mattered. His actions spoke louder than words as he worked to bridge the gap, while the town watched with curiosity, drawn into the unfolding drama. Yet, for Julian, nothing mattered more than his children. Julian's growing attachment. As weeks passed, Julian found himself growing more attached to the children than he had ever imagined. The lost years pressed heavily on his heart, filling him with deep remorse. "I missed so much," he whispered to himself, watching them from afar. Though guilt gnawed at him, he let it fuel his determination to be present now. Every action became more intentional, driven by the unwavering desire to make up for lost time. Seeking conversations, determined to bridge the gap, Julian persistently sought honest conversations with Alara. "Can we talk?" he asked one evening. She hesitated but eventually agreed, and their meetings became deep, emotional exchanges. Julian wasn't just seeking forgiveness, he needed the truth. "I need to know, Alara," he said, his voice filled with urgency. Each conversation chipped away at the walls between them, uncovering long-buried emotions. It was a slow, painful process, but one they both knew was necessary. A revealing call. One day, Julian received an unexpected call from one of Alara's close friends. "Julian, there's something you need to know," she said, her tone serious. He listened intently as she revealed the hardships Alara had endured over the years. "She's been dealing with more than you realize," she continued, sharing details that were both startling and heart-wrenching. A wave of empathy and concern washed over Julian, strengthening his resolve to make things right. Alara's struggles uncovered. Learning about Alara's mental and physical struggles shook Julian to his core. "She's managed so much on her own," he reflected, a newfound respect and concern settling over him. The revelation reshaped his perception of her, highlighting her strength and resilience. His determination to mend their relationship deepened. He couldn't change the past, but he could be present now, offering the support she had long lacked. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, his commitment to making things right only grew stronger. Pushing for answers, determined to uncover the full truth, Julian pushed harder for answers, unwilling to accept vague explanations. He sensed there was more to the story and urged Alara to open up. "There's something you're not telling me, Alara," he pressed. Her eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion, but she remained guarded. Julian's persistence only grew, convinced that unraveling the truth was the key to finding closure. For both of them, investigating discreetly, determined to uncover the truth, Julian took matters into his own hands. He reached out to mutual friends and acquaintances, asking discreet yet probing questions about Alara's life around the time of the children's birth. "Do you remember anything unusual?" he'd inquire casually, collecting fragments of information in hopes of uncovering something significant. It was a slow, meticulous process, but Julian was relentless, driven by an unshakable need to finally understand. Friendship with Sarah uncovered. Julian's quiet inquiries uncovered Alara's close friendship with a woman named Sarah, who had mysteriously disappeared around the time of the children's birth. Who is Sarah? He wondered, sensing that this might be the lead he had been searching for. The timing was too coincidental to ignore, and with each passing moment, his curiosity and determination to uncover the truth only intensified. Curiosity and guilt. With the revelation about Sarah, Julian's curiosity and guilt deepened. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had overlooked something vital. Why didn't I know about her? He wondered, silently berating himself for not paying closer attention in the past. Each new detail weighed heavily on him, a reminder of the choices he had made. But instead of deterring him, this discovery only strengthened his resolve. He had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Confrontation about Sarah. Julian could no longer suppress his curiosity. Confronting Ilara, he demanded, "Who is she, Ilara?" His voice was firm, unwavering. At the mention of Sarah, Ilara's face went pale, her guarded expression faltering. Sensing her hesitation, Julian pressed on, "I need to know the truth." The weight of his determination left her with no escape. The room grew thick with tension, heavy with unspoken words, as Ilara struggled to find the right ones. Ilara breaks down, faced with undeniable evidence and Julian's sincere remorse. Ilara finally broke down, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to hold herself together. "You won't understand, Julian," she whispered, her voice cracking. Julian reached out, his hand trembling. "Try me," he urged. The sincerity in his eyes shattered the last of her defenses. And for the first time, Ilara felt she could finally reveal the truth she had kept hidden for so long. The secret revealed. With a deep breath, Ilara finally unveiled the secret she had guarded for a decade. "I adopted the children from Sarah, who was in desperate need," she confessed. Julian's world shifted, his mind struggling to process her words. "Adopted," he echoed, stunned. As the reality of Ilara's sacrifice sank in, he realized the immense burden she had carried alone, shielding everyone from the truth. The room fell into heavy silence, the weight of her revelation pressing down on them both. Julian's stunned reaction. Julian was overwhelmed by the revelation, the weight of Ilara's words settling heavily on him as silence filled the room. A surge of guilt washed over him for the years he had lost with the children. "All this time," he muttered, shaken by the truth. The regret was almost unbearable. He had accused Ilara of betrayal and walked away, never realizing the depth of her sacrifice. The realization struck him like a ton of bricks, leaving him utterly speechless. Pure intentions realized. As Julian absorbed Ilara's story, he realized her intentions had always been pure. She had made immense sacrifices without expecting anything in return. "You did all this for those kids. For us," he said, his voice laced with awe. Ilara nodded, tears still glistening in her eyes. In that moment, Julian saw her in a new light, her choices driven by love and unwavering compassion. A deep sense of admiration filled him, replacing the doubts that once clouded his judgment. Heart-to-heart conversation. Julian and Ilara spoke openly for hours, peeling away years of hurt and misunderstanding. "I'm so sorry for everything," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. Ilara met his gaze, her expression softening. "We can't change the past, but we can work on the future," she replied. In that moment, a sense of hope emerged between them. Together, they began shaping a new path for their family, one built on understanding, trust, and unity. It was the beginning of a second chance. Ilara's bold decision. Ilara's confession shattered everything Julian thought he knew. His mind raced, struggling to process the truth. "You mean they aren't biologically ours?" he asked, his voice unsteady. Ilara nodded, confirming his deepest shock. A wave of emotions crashed over him: disbelief, confusion, and an unexpected sense of loss. He had spent so much time trying to reconnect, only to realize the foundation of his assumptions had never been real. Yet, as he looked at Ilara, he saw the weight of her sacrifice, and his confusion deepened. A secret adoption. Ilara took a deep breath before answering. "I had to, Julian. Sarah had no way out, and I couldn't let those children suffer." Her voice wavered with emotion. Julian sat in stunned silence, piecing together everything he had learned. He had never even heard of Sarah until now, yet her presence had shaped his entire life without him knowing. "And you did this all without telling me?" he finally asked, his voice a mix of hurt and disbelief. Ilara met his gaze, guilt flickering in her eyes. "I didn't think you'd understand, or stay." Out of compassion, Julian ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly as the truth settled in. He had spent years resenting Ilara, convinced she had betrayed him, when in reality, she had shouldered an unimaginable burden alone. "You took on so much," he murmured, his voice filled with awe and regret. Alara wiped a tear from her cheek, nodding. I just wanted to give them a chance, Julian. I couldn't walk away. The weight of her sacrifice pressed down on him, making him realize just how much he had misjudged her. Keeping secrets. Julian swallowed hard, realizing how his own stubbornness had driven a wedge between them. He had always prided himself on standing by his principles, but in doing so, he had unknowingly pushed Alara into secrecy. I thought I did the right thing, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Alara sighed, her expression a mix of sadness and understanding. And I did what I thought was best for everyone, she whispered. Their unspoken pain hung in the air. Years of misunderstandings finally laid bare between them. Unfounded concerns. Julian exhaled deeply, the weight of their past choices settling between them. You didn't have to do it alone, he said again, his voice softer this time. Alara offered a sad smile. But you weren't ready to hear it then, she admitted. He couldn't argue his rigid beliefs had blinded him to possibilities beyond his own perspective. Now, with the truth finally out, he saw the love and sacrifice behind Alara's actions. And for the first time in years, he felt their wounds beginning to mend. Julian's immense guilt. Alara took a deep breath, the tension between them shifting. I never wanted you to feel betrayed, she said softly. Julian ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed by the years lost to anger and pride. I should have listened. I should have been there, he murmured. Alara studied him for a long moment before nodding. Maybe now, we can finally move forward, she said. For the first time in years, the possibility of healing no longer felt out of reach. Acknowledging Alara's bravery, a gentle silence settled between them, filled with unspoken understanding. They deserve to know the truth. When the time is right, Alara said, her voice steady. Julian nodded. And they deserve to have both of us. For the first time in years, they stood on common ground, ready to rebuild what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy, but together, they could give the children the love and stability they deserved. Discussing the future, with a newfound sense of unity, Julian and Alara laid the foundation for their future as co-parents. They discussed schedules, responsibilities, and how best to support the children without disrupting their lives. Consistency is key, Alara noted. Julian agreed, determined to be the father they needed. For the first time in years, they were on the same page, not as a broken couple, but as two people bound by love for their children. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about moving forward, together. Emotional conversation. In that quiet moment, a bridge was rebuilt between them, not as lovers, but as partners in parenthood. The past couldn't be undone, but the future was still theirs to shape. One step at a time, Alara whispered, allowing herself to believe in the possibility of healing. Julian nodded, his grip steady. They had both made mistakes, but now, they were choosing to do better for their children, for themselves, and for the family they had created against all odds. Rebuilding their relationship, with renewed determination, Julian and Alara embraced the uncertainty of the road ahead. They knew healing wouldn't happen overnight, but the commitment to move forward together was enough for now. As they stood side by side, the past no longer felt like an unmovable shadow, but a lesson that had brought them to this moment. Their family's story was still being written, and this time, they would write it together.